So, to begin with, I would like to introduce our next presenter, who is Susan Crossman. And Susan helps spiritually focused coaches, leaders, and innovators write and publish books that make a difference in their businesses and in the world. And she does so through a variety of high impact one-on-one and group coaching programs that are profound, inspiring, and fun. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story about me and how Susan impacted my life. I was having a conversation with Susan not too long ago, and the book that I have written now, I have written 9 drafts on. And I was sharing with her that I really enjoy the creative process. And she asked me a very pertinent question. And she asked me, why do I want to publish that book? Not just write the book, because I've gotten a ton of value from just writing the book. But why do I want to publish it? Why do I want to bring it out into the world? And that made me pause and think. And with the events of this past month with my oldest son going in and out of hospitals, and honestly being in the ICU on Wednesday night, I now know why, very, very, very strongly, why I want to publish that book. And that is to help other people find the bridge across the divide, to cross the chasm that too often we encounter in this life and don't know how to cross ourselves. So Susan has and takes great joy in fulfilling on her mission of supporting more peace on the planet. And she believes that a well-written book can be a powerful force for good in our world. And having been touched and inspired and elevated by so many books in my own life, I totally concur. I also don't think it is any surprise that Susan, in her heart space, in the cavern that we created in the meditation that we just experienced, that the word that she found on the walls of that cavern was peace, is peace. So let us welcome Susan Crossman to sing her heart song.
Oh. Thank you, Steve. What a wonderful introduction, and so wonderful to be here with everybody. It's always a treat to talk about writing, and especially to talk about writing as an aspect of singing our heart song. So I'm just delighted to be here, very excited about sharing a few things with everybody over the next 45 minutes, hour or so, however much time we can have. I really love the theme of this summit, singing your heart song. And it's been a very powerful motivator for me in my journey from writer to author to book coach and editor. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. But I like to start all of the workshops and so on that I do with a little exercise called What's Your Word? And I'd like everybody to put in the chat box a word that describes how you're feeling about your writing right now. You're writing your book, a creative project that you might be engaged in. Just let's pop up in the chat box and see how you're feeling. The reason I feel that's important, by the way, is because I think as writers, particularly, one of our opportunities is to help people connect to their emotional world, to their feelings, to that heart space that Steve was just talking about. And the more in tune we are with how we feel, the better able we are to help our readers connect with that emotional world too. So what have we got? We've got truth, simultaneously gratitude and frustration. It's feeling like a very powerful thunderstorm. Ooh, that's a good one, Lee. I like that. Legacy. Jewel is excited and engaged. Isn't that wonderful? Aren't those great words? Isn't it fun to check in with how we feel? I love doing that. That's a little activity that my friend Jennifer Huff does. She's one of my spiritual mentors. She runs a company called The Wide Awakening. And I got in the habit of doing that with Jennifer years and years ago. And once I got started on that concept of what's one word that sums up how I'm feeling, I do that quite a lot, actually, for me personally, too. So we're here to talk about singing our heart song. Specifically, one thing that I'd like to talk about, which is something that I think is pretty cool. Hey, Steve, can you let me share my screen? Is that a possibility? Or Olivia, I'm not sure who's the tech boss.
Consider it done. It is done.
Thank you so much. So an idea that I had a while ago, and Steve and I had a conversation about this a while ago as well, is I have this belief that writers are the record keepers for humanity. I think that we have an opportunity as writers to really reflect back to humanity, to the other people in our communities, what's really going on. And it's something that we can reflect that through because of what's happening either in our families or in our communities, in our corporations, even at times, in our culture, just about you name it. And we as writers typically tend to be different people. We tend to be observers. We tend to have the DNA of an observer. And a lot of the people on this call today may reflect back on your life and recognize yourself as an observer, that you notice things other people don't necessarily notice. You feel things other people don't necessarily feel. You also have a sense of an ability to synthesize ideas from different parts of your life, from different things that you see and experience and so on. You can put things together in ways that other people maybe haven't thought about doing. Another aspect that I've noticed of writers that I find really intriguing is that we are also interpreters. And I think in line with being record keepers, we are also interpreters of the human experience. And that gives us a really important role in the world. A lot of the people that I work with as a book coach and as an editor, when we start out on our relationship together, they're not fully aware of the importance of what it is they're doing. And I was like that too, way back when I started my first book. I looked at it as a vanity project. This was something self-serving that I wanted to do. And that's a wonderful part of being a writer, by the way. That's valid in and of itself, although at the time I didn't recognize that. But I didn't see it as being something that I was contributing to the world. And that's what I would like to invite everybody here today to start looking at, is that this book that you're writing is something that is a big contribution. And it's bringing your piece of the puzzle to the world as we have it. A little bit about me. I mentioned I'm a book coach and I'm an editor. I've written 5 traditionally published books myself, fiction and nonfiction. I come at this world of writing from the aspect of a writer. I have that DNA piece of a writer in me. And even as a young girl, I was writing, always writing something. I became a journalist right out of university. I started writing for some strong Canadian daily news publications. And then I ended up in government communications. I ended up in marketing. I was a marketing copywriter for a while. I've worked in content marketing for a long time. But along the way, my dream had been to write a book. And now, fast forward 5 books later, I have a really remarkable life. And some of these pictures here reflect some of the fun things that I do with my life. I do a lot of speaking. I travel when the borders are open. That picture there with me with a baguette in my hand is from when I was in France a couple of years ago, studying Chartres Cathedral as a storybook. I had a magnificent opportunity to go and learn from some of the world's leading storytellers about how Chartres Cathedral was actually created, as all cathedrals were, as a living repository of this story of spirituality that man and women have had running through our veins since time immemorial. So that was a pretty spectacular trip that I had. Also, there I am ziplining Costa Rica. And finally, the last picture there is at the Livraria Lelo in Porto, Portugal, which is a magnificent bookstore that J.K. Rowling worked at, J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame. So I love to do fun things. And as I said, I've written 5 books. There's little pictures of the 5 book covers there. Again, lots of speaking. That's a picture of me speaking at a rugby stadium in New Zealand. And I've also been on an Oprah Winfrey Network program called the Life Story Project. So lots of things happened as a result of me becoming an author. I'd been a writer for a long time, but there was something about crossing that threshold into authority with the publication of my books that has really put my life on a different track, which has been pretty fulfilling and exciting for me. That first book, this one here, actually, I have a copy of that right here. Shades of Teal, it's a novel. And that book took me 13 years to write from start to finish. Again, as I said, it was kind of a vanity project for me. I didn't understand that there was something bigger at work in my life when I first wrote that book. And what happened for me after some very, very busy years was my husband at the time was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, and then he died. And pertinent to the topic of this telesummit, this singing your heart song, sing your heart song, is that my husband died with a lot of songs unsung, is how I looked at it at the time. He was only 48 years old, father and stepfather of 5 kids. And so it was a real tragedy for him to have been taken so young. And what it did for me was made me realize that my days are numbered too. All of our days are numbered. We just don't know when we're going to go. And in terms of the project of that book that I was writing, I figured I better put some fuel in my giddy up here and get that book finished and written, because I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to finish that book. So that did a lot for me. It was, of course, horribly tragic, but it did a lot for me in terms of motivating me to sing my song, sing my heart song, get that book written and get it out there and see what happens. And so that's really, a big part of my motivation has been to help other people get their books written. So not that there's an urgency around how long is life going to last, but so there is an urgency around expressing yourself into the world so that you can maximize the benefit that you have for humanity as well. I feel that writing is a reflection of our writing is a reflection of who we are and who we are here to be. If we go back as far as Homer's The Odyssey, that was a magnificent book. And even today, I think it's been a couple thousand years now since that composition was first created. I believe it actually was first spoken, that story, long story. Today, a lot of us feel it's a little bit tedious, but Homer's Odyssey, we know, is to be a really, really powerful story. And that book really reflected the times around it. We look at what's in the Odyssey today, and we will see how that author, Homer, saw his world, and he brought a lot of his world into the pages of that book. So Homer was a reflection of his community, and he was interpreting the world. Even today, we have that interpretation. But for the people at the time who benefited from his story, he was the interpreter as the author. The other one that I find really interesting in terms of that is Chaucer. I'm a big fan of Geoffrey Chaucer. A lot of people today might know the Canterbury Tales. Geoffrey Chaucer was another individual who was writing in his time. And at the time, the world around him was very different than it is today. And yet it's reflected in the stories that he tells in the Canterbury Tales. So I find that pretty cool that Geoffrey Chaucer and Homer, as the authors, had a very powerful impact on us even today, just because they were reflecting the world around them. From a nonfiction book perspective, I look at Charles Darwin, Benjamin Spock, Alex Haley was Malcolm X. Oh, there's not a picture of Malcolm X there. The Female Eunuch with Germaine Greer, Stephen Hawking. All of these people have written books that in very powerful ways reflect the reality that they see around them. So they've given us a really important glimpse at ourselves through their piece of the puzzle. Each of those authors had very different perspectives on the world that they were looking at, and yet they couldn't help bring their worldview into their writing. And I think that's an important piece of what we do as authors and as writers, even if it's not a book project you might be working on. any of the articles, blog posts, social media posts that you're doing have an important part to play in helping other people understand the world around them. If you're a writer, you may have noticed that not everybody is like you. Not everybody is an observer. Not everybody is really pretty good at synthesizing the information around them. And that's something I think is a DNA aspect of who we are as writers. We can't help it. We're made that way. And I invite you to consider that the book that you're working on is a unique thing. Everything that's ever happened to you has had an impact on creating of you the perfect funnel through which your books were meant to flow. So the family that you were born into, your siblings, if you have them, your parents, the schools that you went to, that bully in the third grade who pushed you down and hurt you, the teachers that had good and maybe perceptively not so good things to say about you, the people that you've had a relationship with, oh gosh, what else? The jobs you've held, the training you've had, the education you've had, all of that has formed you, has had an impact on you becoming exactly you. I happen to believe in a higher power that does a really good job of facilitating us to become the people we're here to be. And in my model of the world, the slice of life that I live in, it's to become the writer that you're here to be. And so I think we are guardians of the truth of who we are as writers. That is what we are here to be, the guardians of who we are. And we are actually also curators of humanity's story. And we're going to start doing a little more interactive stuff here, because I think that identity plays a really important part in our lives as writers. And what I want to do is do a little exercise. Is that okay if we do a little exercise? Everybody's up for a little exercise? Awesome. Okay. So part of what I think helps us become the writers that we're here to be is to have a good grip on who we think we are. Because who we think we are right now is not necessarily the people we are going to think we are 5 years from now. When I look back to when I started writing my first book, I didn't think of myself as an author. My sense of identity didn't include author. But we're going to do a little exercise here. And I'm going to invite you to just take 5 minutes. And whoops, where are we here? There we go. 5 minutes. Oh, I didn't share my sound. I like to have pretty music while we're doing this. And just jot down a little bit about who you think you are. So I've got the screen going here. Okay, all of the identities that you wear in a typical day. So that might be the loving parent, the devoted son or daughter, a loyal employee, hardworking entrepreneur, whatever you think that is for you. Just take a few minutes now and jot that down. And I will set my timer for 5 minutes. I promise I do have music coming. Okay, there we go. Anybody need more time? I'd love you to share with me some of what you found. Who can share? You can put it in the chat box too, if you'd like. What
There's
was
a lot of
the
roles in
experience
our life.
Wait, hey, Nancy. A lot of
Hey,
roles.
yes, very much so.
Did that surprise you?
It did.
Yeah. Did you include author?
Yes.
Writer? You did. Awesome. And you've written probably, Nancy?
I have.
So that's an easy jump for you, an easy connection. Yeah. Did anybody not include writer or emerging author, and did that surprise you? Maureen.
It's interesting, you know, I've been asked this question several times in my lifetime. Who are you? And I didn't include author or daughter or wife. I started out with I am a visionary. I am a change maker. I'm a woman with power and conviction. I'm a gardener. I am love. I am a bubbly person dash personality. I am determined. I am a survivor. I am poised and I am curious.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. One thing I sidestepped in all of this identity business is we're not actually our roles at all, are we? And you've brought that out beautifully. That, yeah, thank you very much for sharing, Maureen. That's just lovely. Much appreciated. Jewel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, Susan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'd agree actually with what Steve's put in, Maureen, that the various things that have been tootled in the chat. But as I put for mine, I've thought about this for a very long time. And the only conclusion that I ever came to was simply that I am. That's who I am. Everything else, it fluctuates, goalpost shift, it's perception, it's the roles that you play through time. Who I am is just I am. And the one thing I will add to that is I was a bit concerned when I came to this conclusion originally because of the way God is described as the great I am. So I'm being quite concise here with there might be divine in me, one can hope, but I simply am. And hopefully, you know, I put in that, does it count for this exercise? Because I wasn't quite sure what you were trying to pull from us. But yeah, I you know, I have had hundreds of roles, will have hundreds of roles. I could describe myself with loads of different adjectives and things like that, but ultimately it comes down to that very simple thing of just being, and I am. I hope that's okay for what you're trying to.
It's
trying
beautiful. There are no wrong answers.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, that's I believe that there really are no wrong answers in life. There are choices that lead to suboptimal experiences for sure. And in terms of who we think we are, it's all good. It's and the point of the identity piece is that some of who we think we are, some aspects of that will get in the way of us liberating ourselves into doing the writing that we are capable of doing. And as long as we keep that open, and you have done that beautifully, Jewel, you are. And that encompasses everything, doesn't it? Including writing, including books, including your authority, what you have to share that will provide wisdom and beauty and relief to the people that you're here to serve through your writing. So thank you for that. That's a beautiful thing to say.
Thank you for
Any-
hearing me. I'll
Yeah.
turn the mic off now.
Oh, no, just lovely to swim in this pond with everybody. Thank you. So we've talked about the DNA of a writer and kind of that aspect of who we are here to be. And even if you don't resonate with that idea that you've got writer DNA in you, then that's okay too. Because again, there's no wrong answers. There are just aspects of discovery is how I look at all of this. What makes it tricky for us is that we have to engage and participate in life. Although we're observers, we tend to be excellent observers. And although we are outstanding observers, we also have to look at this concept of participation. And that's something I've struggled with a little bit in my life, in that I'm quite happy observing. I'll sit and I'll watch people and I'll wonder, okay, why did they say that? Or why did they do that? Or why did I do that? You know, like it's pretty fascinating to look at human behavior and see what people are doing. But there needs to be another step. And that other step in my model of the world is to ask ourselves, are we observing or are we participating? Because writing of any aspect of writing requires us to take action. And it is really easy as a writing kind of a person to do a lot of observing and really enjoy the observing and the thinking and the journaling, because that's how a lot of us process how we feel and what we're experiencing. And that can be pretty fun too. But ultimately, if we're going to carry our song out into the world, we need to take action. We need to participate in the project of writing. And some people find that easier than others. I work with a lot of people who love to plan their book and love to think about their book and love to talk about their book. But when it gets right down to it, the hard part is sitting down and actually doing the writing. And some of you may have experienced that as well, that you know you've got it in you, you know it wants to come out, but actually making it happen is really hard sometimes. And that's a perception too. But I'd love to hear from everybody how you keep yourself motivated. What is it that you do to take action on your writing? Any volunteers there to share with us? How do you get yourself to take that action and be a participant in the project of writing? I'm going to call on you if I don't get volunteers.
I will volunteer.
Thank you, Steve.
So there are a couple of things that I do. There's like the tactical aspect of starting out my day out. Well, I start out my day with meditation and yoga and about a couple of hours of self-care activities. But one of the very first things that I do, and actually have it as the first thing on my business schedule, is to write. Because it is who I am. It is what I do. And in order for that to express itself, I need to give it the time and the space in order for that to happen. So there's that aspect of it, but there's also more of the emotional and the social aspect of it as well, in that I have reminders in my life that remind me that writing is important. Whether it be the books that I have in my life, which are also a huge part of my daily experience. But I also have wonderful friends who, contribute and help to create that space for writing.
You're lucky. That's fantastic. Okay. I think Olivia had her hand up first. Yeah. And then we'll go to Jewel and Maureen.
So I was just going to echo Steve's sentiment there about just talking out loud. So giving voice to that activity, talking out loud. And I've learned an affirmation from a presenter yesterday that my voice is an open channel for creativity. And we can speak our book. I think sometimes what makes me stuck too, and other might be stuck, is that, we got to go through this process and it is a project, but we don't always have to write it. We can speak it if we're more comfortable that way and then have it transcribed. So, being open to, new ways of doing things, being innovative, etc. that also keeps you in action.
Beautiful. Thank you, Olivia. Yes, and I'm hoping that someone has mentioned otter.ai, OTTER.ai as a transcription platform, a transcription app. I use that a lot in my book coaching calls with clients. Sometimes that's what we do is I will interview a chapter out of them, and then they have the transcription and they just simply have to edit that. So yeah, you can speak your book. I love that idea. Jewel.
To be fair, I think Maureen was first.
Oh, was she? Oh, thank you. I
Yep.
didn't notice that. Then we will go to Maureen. Thank you, Jewel.
Jill, we all get an opportunity to speak. Thank you for that. For me, I've only started to write in the last couple of years, and it's all based on intuition and from my heart. I just felt that I had and have a message to share, and I started writing. So I have no training. I just write. And there's time the punctuation doesn't make sense. There's time the sentences aren't complete. I just do it. Yeah. And I write blogs, and one blog I wrote was called The In-Between. And for me, that's the time when I'm waking up in the morning, still kind of in that sleep mode, and stuff just comes to me so naturally then. And I have my phone beside my bed, and I just blog in my notes on my phone. And whatever comes from me, I write. So I don't plan a time of the day. I don't decide that I'm going to write something. It just comes. And when it doesn't come, I'm okay with that, because more will come again. And Steve, I love you say you have friends. I thought, I've been, looking for my tribe on all levels. I love spiritual tribe, because very spiritual based is how I am and live. However, how about a tribe of writers, people that write, a club? You've given me that desire to now look for a club locally for writers. And Susan, I love your words of being an observer and a synthesizer. I'm like, oh, I've been that all my life. I didn't realize it was part of me needing to write. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's some similarities. And again, that's where I come from, that I believe it's a DNA piece. I believe that since the dawn of time, writers have been an important part of a society, and that we have played a really crucial role in evolving humanity. And so if you feel that bloom within you, that blossom of writing that wells up within you, you can't help it, then please look at it as this is part of who you are and who you're here to be and who you're meant to be. And that without us writers, the world is a dry and stingy place, that we really have such an important role to play here. So thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that. And Jewel.
Hi again.
Generous Jewel.
Okay, I'll try and be concise. So a little bit of background, if you like. I've always loved writing. I've always liked the fluidity of it. So I love calligraphy as well. Appeals to the other arty-farty side of me. But the actual content, I actually can't go anywhere without a pad and paper, a pen or pencil or something. Even lipstick has worked in the past. In fact, I could even go to say mascara when I used to wear that. It was whatever I had that could make. And I found that with that, primarily what came through was poetry more than anything else. But when I was at home, I actually had a surface to write on, then it was different types of writing that would come through. And it's always been a love anyway. And I found that writing became a real friend, my best pal, if you like, when I started doing diary work and journaling. I got my first one when I had just turned 11. And I used it because I was being abused at the time from the age of 9 to 13. And it was my outlet. It was my bestest pal. And I could tell it anything and it wouldn't argue with me or judge me. And so the love of writing strengthened through that process. And I now have a daily journal. So for motivating oneself, I still waffle to my journal, bless it. And it still puts up with the amount. I mean, I go through tons of paper, the poor thing, but that actually is a good primer, you know, to get you going. But to link into something that Lee said, this is one area where I use my dark side as a helping hand, because I can, you know, just occasionally be temperamental or bloody minded. And when you can't get yourself to do something consistently because, you know, you're having a bad hair day, or as recently you're in 30 degrees Celsius temperatures, that element of your personality can push you forward and can really help. So you tap into what that's about. So I find that very useful. And embracing the dark side is the note I put down here. And grit and perseverance. I have had many what most people would call traumatic things in my life, and all of them are things that I've learned from, grown from, evolved from, and have created that grit, that perseverance to keep going. On a more practical level, I tend to find that if I have meditation beforehand, that just makes it easier for it to flow. Making sure my environment is conducive to it. So like I said, the physical side of it there. Having music in the background, my parents could never understand how I could do stuff whilst listening to music. There's something about it that was really helpful, so I still apply that. The community that you have, supportive people, not necessarily physical humans here. Most of mine tend to be people like yourselves, who are all around the world, who provide different perspectives and different input and challenge. I love people who challenge how I think, because there's not very many of them who can do that, which sounds terrible and awfully arrogant, but there aren't many people who can really push a button and go, hang on a minute, let's see whether that's a different way of being. So I appreciate people like that very much. And I think else, reviewing a vision board, again, on a daily thing, a daily practice. So what is your end goal? Where do you want to be? What is your structure for the day that you want to do? What do you wish to achieve and attain, so that you've actually got that focus and that inner guide. And also the other thing I would say is giving yourself permission not to do it, to have a timeout, and to be okay with that, rather than beating yourself over the head with a huge stick for, hang on a minute, you haven't done your 10-15 minutes minimum writing today, Joel, you know. So that to me is also very important. So keeping it in balance with life, the world and the universe. So there you go. That, believe it or not, was my short answer.
Wow, beautifully said. I would love to read an article about that somewhere. Why don't you maybe think about that? Wouldn't that be interesting? So thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Isn't it fascinating? Isn't this neat how everybody has such a beautiful perspective on this magical way of being in the world, that it really is magical to write. It's a magical thing to do. The final thing that I want to bring to my remarks today, and I know we're just about done, is the idea that we are in a relationship with our writing, with our books. And if you think about any relationship that you have right now, what happens if you don't spend time with that relationship? It may be a friend, a partner, even your children, if you have children. When we don't nourish our relationships with our time and attention, then they can go south pretty quickly. There can be misunderstandings and confusion. And I believe our books are entities that are, in my experience anyway, particularly as a book coach, I see how parts of someone's book are in their imagination, and part of it is in their heart, and part of it is in their dreams, and part of it is in the higher dimensions of who they are, in their guidance, and part of it is on their hard drive, and part of it is in their journals. And there are pieces of the book scattered all over the place, but that book actually does exist. It really, truly is an existing entity. And the writer's task is to bring all of those pieces together and integrate them into this 3D reality called a book, or it might be a blog post, or it might be an article. But all of what that piece is meant to be is is only able to be brought together and integrated through the action of the writer. And so that's our opportunity as writers, is to draw all of these magical pieces of our book together, give them life, and know that we're in a relationship with that book or with that piece of writing, that we actually are part of the relationship. And so the more we nourish that entity called a book, the more that we nourish that relationship, the greater the results are going to be. That the impact of embracing our writing is huge, and it will actually have enormous results for years to come. And as long as we're in that relationship, and as long as we're looking at ourselves as an empowering partner in that relationship, we will have amazing results with our writing. And that takes commitment. And that's really what I find serves me very well, is to understand that when I'm working on a book, I am committed to the success of that book. Not even the success, it's the birth of that book. That as the midwife or the mom, I'm really there to make sure that that book has the life that the promise of the thought of the book can give rise to in the world. So can I have one more minute? And I would just like to say, let's take 1 minute, and I invite everybody, and I won't put the music on for this, but I invite everybody to write down a statement of commitment to your book or your writing, whichever is comfortable for you. Just take a minute and just write down a few words of how you want to be in relationship with your writing. What is your commitment to your writing? Okay. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gave you a few things to chew on as we go forward in this big adventure we're on. I would love to thank everybody for being here today and for being with me on this journey into the story only you can tell. We are all repositories of the stories that only we can tell. And we're also the guardians of the story, of our stories for the next generation, for the generations to come, that those stories reside within us. And in that action of committing to telling those stories, we're actually making a commitment to future generations, that these stories are our legacy. They're the legacy of humanity. They're the legacy of the aspect of humanity that you represent with your life. And so it's such a powerful position to be in as a writer, is to be that writer, to be that person who interprets the world around us for those people who we're here to serve. Because I think basically that's another aspect of being a writer, is to be in service to our gifts and to humanity and to the higher powers, our guidance, that we really are able to make a huge difference in the world. And I want to thank Steve so much for giving me an opportunity to be here with everybody, and actually, Steve, for drawing people together and focusing us all on this beautiful, beautiful concept of our heart song and our stories, because I think that's something the world needs more of. And you, my friend, are just such a beacon of light for so many people. And I really appreciate you. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Susan, so much. And I have to share that the spotlight with Olivia, who helped me to refine the concept of this summit. When we first met about this summit, we had done a summit previously in the beginning of April. My intention with the next summit was to call it Intention to Shine, and Olivia challenged me on that title. And without really I don't know if either one of us recognized what she was actually challenging me on, but to refine the idea of I had spoken about the song of the ugly duckling becoming the song of the beautiful swan, which, if you're not familiar, and I wasn't familiar when I first wrote about this, but a swan song is a song that is given at the end of life. And so it's, when we begin in life, my mom tells me I was an ugly child when I was a baby. I was like all purple. My hair was like all up, standing up on end and all that. And she just had a way, she literally had a way with words, but sometimes those words were a little bit not what she intended. But we might start out with, being the purple child with hair standing straight up. But by the end, we can become that beautiful swan. We can sing the song that, that we're here to sing. And thank you, Susan, for helping us to give form and shape and life to those words that, I speak regularly and often. Writing is a vehicle, a vessel that is distinct and separate from my speaking. They work together well, but they are definitely two different types of expression. It's like painting and sculpture, or they're both art, but they're different forms. And I am so grateful for people like you, and I definitely include you among those friends who helped me to write the words that I write. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Olivia. Olivia has been such a huge part of this summit. And it almost didn't happen.
Well, it takes a team, doesn't it? So Olivia, thank you to you too. This is it. Yeah, we're all on the same side, aren't we? I think we're all working for the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I would love to just have you guys unmute and give a round of applause for Susan and send her some, radiant energy her way for a beautiful presentation today.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank you.